Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Welcome back to the Travelers Podcast. I'm Brother Ali, recording here in the Pacific Northwest because I'm out on the Travelers Tour. The tour has been really dope. It's been really wonderful to be back on stage again, to be in a room full of people on the same page at the same time with the same intention, the same energy, singing songs together. It's really, really profoundly beautiful. I'm so grateful. So I'm recording here in a hotel room, not in my studio in Istanbul. You can also probably hear that my voice has a little touch of extra rasp on it. You know, my voice has become something that I have to be really careful about. I've done all these shows over all these years. And it's really important to me. Me and Chuck D talk about it in last week's episode. That I really, he compliments me and my voice in that episode. And the Sufis say that one of the great practices of a spiritual seeker is to be quiet and to be still when being complimented, because your ego is struggling to grab hold of that like either you grab onto it and you're like, yes, I am dope, or your ego does this fake self-deprecating thing where it's like, no, I'm nothing. And when the reality of the spiritual path is we want to see ourselves less, we want to point to ourselves less, and the good that we're able to do is a gift and a responsibility from the source of all things. And so when we're complimented in that way, to sit still, but also great teachers like Chuck D, and Chuck D is a truly great mentor and teacher and guide. It's one of the things that he's so strong at, and one of the things that he's known for, is oftentimes our teachers, they speak to us as though we've already reached the potential that they see in us, because they know that encouraging us and validating us can be the wind beneath our wings. It can be the wind in our sails. It can be the energy that we oftentimes need to push forward and to help us get over all of our self-doubt, and all of the ways that we, sometimes speak to ourselves, that I'm not worthy and all this other kind of stuff. It helps us get over that hurdle. And so that's what Chuck is doing, to me. But also the praise that he gives me and the validation, encouragement he gives me with regard to voice, it was difficult to sit still. And you hear I almost interrupt him there, because it's like, man, that's the man that is the inspiration for the voice that I have on the mic. Chuck D, KRS-One, it's those two guys, but mostly Chuck D, So that encouragement means the world to me. But I've been projecting my voice for 20 years. And for a long time, I didn't know how to use my voice. I didn't know how to care for my voice. And I do have permanent vocal damage. This time on this tour has been really great, But today was supposed to be one of the vocal rest days. So I'm just checking in here quickly to add these little pieces so that we can get to this week's episode. I am on the Travelers Tour with my amazing DJ Last Word, and with an amazing artist from the Twin Cities named Mally. Starting this week, we're in Lake Tahoe, Sacramento, Berkeley, Santa Cruz, Fresno. We're in Santa Ana at the Observatory with Kali Buds. Then we get into the Southwest, which I love so much. Tucson, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Then we get to Durango, Colorado, Salt Lake City, Fort Collins, Colorado, Denver, Colorado. And then we have a few Midwest shows. We do Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Chicago, and then we end in Madison. And my dear brother Slug from Atmosphere will be with us in the VIP question and answer, kind of an intimate joint that we do for people that opt for the VIP package. So head to brotherali.com in the event section, get your tickets, get your VIP packages. This tour has been super dope. It's been really, really good. And I'm looking forward to continuing on. Thank you so much for all of the feedback on the Chuck D episode last week. We've had amazing episodes so far. We had Cornel West and Keith Ellison and Ilhan Omar and Chuck D. This week we're joined by Sa-Roc, who is one of the most amazing hip hop artists to emerge in the last several years. This is the first episode with someone who I consider a peer. The other ones that I mentioned, guests that we've had, are my elders. And so there's a certain level of engagement and conversation that we have with elders. Sa-Roc and some of the other artists that we have coming up, is from my generation. And she's one of the people who, her artistry, her example, her witness, the way that she arrives in the space of, as an MC, as a healer, as a teacher, as a storyteller, as a cultural curator, as a creative, is just really profound, really amazing. Sa-Roc is one of the people that when I was a little kid and I was imagining where this culture is going to go, where this art form could go, she's one of those expressions that I had in mind. And so it's really a blessing to be a friend and a brother to Sa-Roc, and I'm really, really grateful to have her on this episode. We've got a new partner and sponsor this week, our dear brother Resma Menakem, the great therapist and public intellectual and educator and healer, has a new book coming, so we'll talk about that more later. We're also partnering again this week with Zakat Foundation and with Vice Gerent and with UPF. So thank you so much for being here for this episode, and enjoy. Well, when I first had the idea to have this podcast, you're one of the people that I wanted to talk to, very near the top of the list. There are so many artists that really speak to me and really exemplify in my mind the best of what art and culture can be in general, but particularly hip hop. It's I'm never mad at artists that are really leaning on the lowest common denominator of the human condition, but I don't really need help being petty. I don't need help liking to nice things. I don't need help being attracted to being attracted to people. I don't need help with any of that. I don't need help being angry. I don't need help being vengeful. But music that really is dedicated to, just beauty and virtue and the highest of who we are, the best of who we are and what we could be and what we can be. That is music that speaks to me particularly. And so of all the people that I want to talk to on the podcast, you are very, very high on the list. And also because I have the honor and the blessing of knowing you personally. So thank you very much for being here. It means a lot. And it's
Thank you. It means a lot to me.
Thing.
Yeah, it means a lot to me.
So let's start at the beginning. Talk to me about growing up in Southeast DC in the 80s and 90s.
It was interesting. It was interesting. DC is a very interesting place, just because there's so much culture there, and so much diversity. But the city is like very much so delineated by these very strict lines and regions and neighborhoods, and quite often, if you lived in a neighborhood, you stayed in the neighborhood, especially if you come from impoverished or underserved communities. But the one thing about my family was that my parents were in a unique position in that my father was an artist / cab driver. So it took him all over the city. He was an artist as well. So, he already had a really good sense of the importance of culture and having culture and that diversity reflected in our household, as well as having a strong sense of like African culture and African representation represented in our household as well. And my mother, being a reader, she brought the literature. She exposed us to so many different writers. And so we were always, even though we lived like in the hood during the like height of the crack era, and we saw like every bit of how the hood and our communities were ravaged by that, silly stuff, like crazy stuff, like how you be at the playground and you see, we recognized, needles and recognized like empty bags of crack and stuff like that, like very early on. But my household was almost like a haven from that, and that I would go from that and then be able to pour through books that were showing me about the Maasai people, that were showing me worlds upon worlds, or my father would always have a copy of, he had a copy of Transcendental, like a book about Transcendental meditation right next to a book about the Quran, right next to a book, we had right next to the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? They're like all these different like choices that we had, not to mention their love for music and their expansive wax collection, which I was always, rifling through. So it was interesting. Like, we lived in a neighborhood where there were a lot of houses, but also a lot of apartment building complexes. So like it was an interesting dynamic. There was a very heavy family component, but then there was also, some fractured families as well. And like, so like it was interesting navigating what we knew in both of these worlds, and seeing as we got older, how all of these different, very different family units were affected by what was happening around us. But it was cool because from the beginning, our family was very, very unique. Like, we were known as the popcorn family.
The popcorn?
It's so ridiculous. Let me tell you that my father believes that we pioneered a lot of things. He believes that he pioneered quite a few things.
Okay.
So like he
invented like popcorn. Is that what you're about to tell me? he's like the George Washington Carver of popcorn.
Exactly. No. Not the popcorn. But we were like very few families who made like freshly popped popcorn. And we would put like because Jiffy Pop and stuff was the thing then. But like, we made freshly popped popcorn, and we would put brewer's yeast, or nutritional yeast is what they call it now, to season it, and like that's all the thing now. But we were doing this very, very early on.
Like Dutch oven? Did you make it in a Dutch?
No, like just in a regular pot with some grease at the bottom of it, and our friends would come over and be like, I remember this one time, this boy I had a crush on in the neighborhood. I realized he played me afterwards. He was like, I never had popcorn like y'all. Who makes it better? Talking about me and my sister. Me and my sister, she's like 2 years older than me. And we were like, oh, I make it better. She was like, no, I make it better. So he was like, y'all both should make it, and then like I'll be the judge of who makes it better. So this boy done got 2 bowls of popcorn. 2 bowls of popcorn off of us because, again, one was the novelty of this freshly popped popcorn that was seasoned apparently unlike any other popcorn seasoning he ever had. But like, he played us out because, he got us to prepare some popcorn for him for free. But I say that to say, like, my father was very, very cutting edge in the way that he raised us, dressed us, exposed us to things. And we were wearing Chuck Taylors before they were definitely cool. They had they were cool in the 70s, and that's why he put them on us. Like, but they definitely were not cool in the 80s. And
he caught that trend before it came around again.
Right, exactly. We were wearing Chuck Taylors before. Remember in the 90s, like everybody was wearing the Army surplus stuff and all of that. He
especially in DC, especially on the East Coast.
Exactly.
West Coast was like workwear, that type of thing.
Right. Okay, yeah. So for the East Coast, that was definitely popping in like the 90s, but in the 80s, the late 80s, he had us wearing like Army surplus backpacks and, just like stuff that we didn't want to wear. But, in his mind, like, this was cool. He always wanted us to be different. He always wanted us to stand out. And he was always a leader versus follower. And that's what he imprinted on us at a very early age. And I find that, even our exposure to music and the arts and culture was very much so exposed to us with that thinking in mind. So he was very careful about what music that we listened to. If he even heard some salacious lyrics, we had to be really quiet. Like, we couldn't like rap our favorite lyrics or sing like any raunchy lyrics, because the minute he heard us singing it, normally he would tune it out, but if he heard us singing it, he would zero in on what are they singing, what are they listening to. And if it was anything crazy, it was like zip onto the jazz station. Like, oh God, never gotta listen to jazz.
But didn't you have a period where you listened to like alternative rock and like?
I did, and I drove my parents crazy too, cause like it was funny because when I was younger, I listened to what they listened to. I liked what they liked. And I still do. Like, I still like all of that stuff I carried with me into my teen years, into my adulthood, all of the Earth, Wind, and Fire, all that stuff. But when I got into my teen years, again, I was very just like kind of, I stood out from like what the other kids liked and dressed like or whatever at that point. So like I was into my grunge thing. I shopped at thrift stores exclusively. I would get like the knockoff Airwalk shoes from Payless. Like,
did you have pins in your clothes? Did you have like did you go through the thing where like, you remember like,
I never had
like those kids used to have like big, like the oversized like safety pins in their
pins.
Jeans. Yeah.
I never had the safety pins, but I wore the black lipstick. I wore 2 small t-shirts and men's pants, and like, just my style was just different from everybody else. They'd be like, that's the crazy girl who walks around with a Stephen King book at all times.
Did you have the plaid shirt tied around your waist? And like I remember the kids used to have like the long sleeve tees with the thumb hole cut in the tee. Yeah, I do. And the black nail polish and just like
exactly black nail.
Each day with each breath we come closer to the reality of death. Oh, dude.
I wasn't goth. It was more like an alternative vibe. I used to chase the little skater dudes down by the library. I love the library anyway, but that was just an excuse to like, watch the guys skateboard and stuff. But so I was into like all that stuff. I was into Nirvana, Cranberries, Foo Fighters, all that kind of stuff.
That's so crazy because I was into all that stuff too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And but I never listened to any of that. I think I was like no, I refuse to.
Yeah.
Like until I started, until me and her got close, and then I'm like, it's actually pretty dope.
Yeah, let me check this out.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. She took me one time. We saw Foo Fighters, and it was one of the most amazing things. It was like a acoustic show, so like nothing plugged in, and man, they killed it so hard. And Dave Grohl talking in between. That's Dave Grohl, right? Yeah, him talking in between the songs was like, because when I go watch somebody, like that's some of my favorite parts. Is like, how do the people talk in between the songs? And man, it was one of the most amazing things I ever saw. I can't front.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to see them, but yeah, they were definitely in the rotation, and I think it was a form of escapism for me, just because it was such a different world from what I was going through at the time, and like that was a way. That kind of music was a way for me to channel a lot of my angst and frustration with what was going on. But yeah, it was funny because I liked being the outsider, but also, there was a bit of alienation as well. But yeah, it was funny, especially since, where I lived, there wasn't any of that. But then as I grew older, I learned about, Bad Brains, being from Southeast, being from my neighborhood. And,
man.
And that just made it all the more cool. Like I didn't get into Bad Brains until I got to college. I had a really good friend named Maurice who was in the original Afropunk movie.
Okay.
He was in a band called Cypher. And he actually is the national director of the Working Families Party right now. But he was in this band called Cypher. It was like a hardcore band, but with an African-centered, like very political message. And I remember going to Brooklyn, Long Island, to visit him, and going to Brooklyn and going to this all-black, all-punk show. And that was my first time seeing Black folks dancing to this music, vibing to this music, performing this type of music. And I was like, yo, why was I not born in New York?
Man, the first time I ever encountered that, when I first moved to Minnesota, there was like this, like I was still getting to know people. And there was this group of dudes, like these like punk rock white dudes that loved hip hop. And so they had like recording equipment at their house, and they're like, yo, if you come over, you can record at our house. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll go check it out. And it's like out in the suburbs, and I took the bus out there, and there was one Black brother that was like down with them. And so we're talking, and we were just having a conversation, the two of us, and we were bonding over not knowing quite how to fit in. And so I was talking to him about, just what it was like for him. I'm like, do these guys, like, did they ever say stuff that like what, how do you feel like if you're in these situations by yourself all the time? What do you do when they say something crazy? And one of them just came over. His name was Jay. And one of them came over and was just like, oh man, Jay knows where he's from. And he said some other, like he just said about like 3 really slick things. None of them were like, but it just felt so funny to me. And I felt like I was overloading a little bit. And I punched him in the face. And then I realized, like,
what?
I'm at their house and I don't know where I am. And I'm in the suburbs. And I don't, so I just like walked out of the house, and I had to walk for like 2 hours to find a bus stop so I could get back to the crib. And then the next,
oh my God,
that was in a weekend. And then on Monday I showed up, and the dude that had invited me, the guy whose house it was his homeroom. And so I showed up, and he was just like, hey man, are we cool? And I was like, yeah, sorry I punched your friend. He was just like, yeah, man. And he was like, you know what, bro? We're all just figuring it out, man. From that point on, I'm just like, yeah, man, we're all just figuring it out. That's cool.
Oh, wow.
So,
I can't imagine you punching somebody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's like, those were different times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to survive. I don't think it's in my nature to be that way. Like, I just had to do it. And I've never been good at it, but I think that there's always been times when I've needed to just like, you're not just gonna beat me up. You're gonna get some too. So it became like a part of having to live like that. So okay, so you're raised in a situation. So it's dope to hear that you're like, I had always known that music was a big part of it, and art, from your dad, and then the literature stuff from your mom. And I know there's overlap between those, but then like hearing the stuff about the popcorn, like, I mean, was that part of the overall way that they were living? And where did this come from? Like, how did this enter their consciousness? Your parents? Food and art, and just the idea of standing out and being different and holding on to culture and just having this unique identity. Like, when did that enter in their consciousness?
I think for my dad, coming from such a poor background, having so little resources, let me say that, because his background was rich and varied and, full of, amazing people and history. So coming from a background with so few resources and having so little to eat at times, and so little just in general in terms of just basic amenities and, basic needs. He, as an adult, he was always very keen on just trying new things, particularly foods. And it just so happened that his cab driving took him all over the city. And there was all kinds of Ethiopian foods and, Italian foods. My parents used to always talk about, like, he worked in an Italian restaurant when he was like 12 years old. He was really tall, so he lied about his age to get a job. He's been working, forever. So I think because he was so, he had come to DC, at a younger age. And for him, DC was like this whole new amazing world, of which he can lose himself in.
Where did he grow up?
He grew up originally in Virginia and then Maryland. And then they came to DC. And so having to fend for himself and, take care of his mom at such an early age, he just was on his own to really just explore. And I never really asked my father how he got into art. I don't know that if he had a particular proclivity for it in like high school, but I know that when he went to college, he started taking art classes. And the exposure to, artists like Romare Bearden, who he really loved, and like how he used like collage and stuff like that. I think his mind, once he saw like thinking in this different way, especially in the 60s and 70s, where the awareness started to get shifted. There was a shift, as well as, people starting to embrace this idea of radicalism and nonconformism, and, also their exposure to, political parties. Like they were a part of the Black Panther Party for like 2 seconds. Like I remember my father telling me, yeah, we went to one meeting and
that jacket was dope. That jacket was ill with that tam, that Ace Deuce tam. That was ill. Then they started talking about we got to carry guns to the police station.
Which, don't get it twisted, my father stayed strapped, so that wasn't the issue. But I think at that, they had my brother in '67, and they became family people. You know what I'm saying? So like that was not in the cards for them at the time, even though that they were aligned with them ideologically about many things. But they also were exposed to, the Eastern religions at the time. So like, late 60s and stuff, early 70s, they were exposed to transcendentalism and meditation and, all of these things, and meeting people who were from all of these different cultures and countries and stuff. They just wholeheartly embraced all of that. And they brought it back into their home, and they built like this amazing little micro community in our home that allowed us to see that we were capable of so much more than where we were. And the world was so much bigger than, some folks, oppressive regime systems would like us to believe. And so that was just really key for us. And that's what they always wanted to impress upon us, that we can do anything we put our mind to.
How old were you when you started going to the Sankofa Pan-African School?
I was 3. They have...
You were 3?
Yeah. So there's the foundational part of the school. The original part of the school is called Watoto Shule, or Nation House Positive Action Center. And that was founded in 1977. And that... I'm sorry, not 1977, I'm tripping. 1973 or so. Don't kill me if anybody's listening. I should know my history about this. But 1973-ish, early 70s. And
circa.
So like that.
We're going to say circa 73.
Circa.
Right.
Ish. Right. So around that time, during that time, that was just like an elementary school. So when I was born, after I came of age, I was 3 years old. I went there I joined my sister and started going to school there. And I went there for 2 years. And then I went to public school for maybe 4 or 5 years. And then I went back to Sankofa, which is the high school, like the junior high school part. Yeah. So it was years and years and years that I had attended that school, which was totally, it was a beautiful space. And I was exposed to so many notable, just like thought leaders and historians and cultural very people who are very important to like moving the culture forward as well. I remember meeting Haile Garima. I remember meeting Kwame Ture, Muta Baruka, John Henrik Clark.
How old were you when you met Dr. Clark?
I was, let's see, I feel like I was
That's high school?
7th or 8th grade.
Yo.
I feel like I was 7th or 8th grade. So I had to have been 10 or 11. Yeah.
Dr. Clark was a powerful man. He was it's interesting, I talked to Dr. Cornel West yesterday, and there's a clip of Dr. West. He clearly thinks like he's speaking together with Dr. Clark. But everything that Dr. West said, Dr. Clark is just on his head. Like, it's just anytime Dr. West a reference, because you know how like Cornel West really loves like European philosophers and all these, and man, he couldn't mention anything. Dr. Clark was on him. It's amazing because he was Malcolm's history teacher. Like he was an advisor. He was a history advisor to Malcolm. That's amazing. I knew about Kwame Ture, but I didn't know about the connection with Dr. Clark.
Yeah. And so you can imagine at the time I'm listening to the Cram. In this world, I'm fully immersed in African culture, history, all of that. Learning African dance, African drill team, African languages. And then when I step out of the school, I'm going back to the hood where a lot of us would take off our clothing because that's what we wore when we went to school. We'd take off our clothing and throw on our jeans or, the stuff we would wear in the street or whatever.
Because you don't want to come back through the neighborhood looking like, how about I got it?
Right. Like, what you got on? I mean, even though like they already knew us for that. Like even when I went to, like we had like African fabric draped instead of a curtain. We had it draped in our door.
Oh, man, yes. Yeah.
So it was like a thing for us. We were known as that. So, but it still was this completely
You're like trying to
different.
pay for the
like
pizza
we were
and
different
cowrie
people.
shells.
Right. Not at all. Don't nobody take no cowrie shells. So it was still like, we were kind of different people in these two different spaces because, I had to be different. I had to be rougher. I had to be, more in line with or keep up with what was happening here in this world, in both worlds. And then on top of that, I'm this kid listening to the Cranberries and, Nirvana and all of these things on top of, loving my go-go and stuff. So it was just like this mishmash of, cultural influences, which was really dope. And I think that for me, that's kind of my approach to music now. I think that kind of informed my approach to music now because I never had this want to conform to a particular style or a particular lane. I kind of was like, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I'm interested in. I'm going to do what, and then whoever that resonates with, whoever's attracted to that, they'll come to me, So as I reflect on, my upbringing and all of the things all of the different worlds I had my toes in and all of the things I experimented with, even though some of it is, I've had like kind of radical shifts from, how present those things are in my life now. Like I don't listen to alt rock right now.
Is there good alt rock right now? I mean, I imagine there's gotta be.
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't like any of the new stuff. It sounds like really commercial and,
it's ill.
At the time.
I feel like a lot of younger hip hop artists, like the younger like rap, like the kids that they call it mumble rap or whatever. But a lot of them seem to be influenced by grunge music.
I don't know that they're influencing it. I think that they like the idea of the bad boy rock star, like the persona. I don't think that they're into the music though. I feel like
I was at Whole Foods
they like
one
the
time.
style.
Yeah, well, I know for sure that I heard some like alternative rock song, like grunge type of sounding song from the 90s. And I knew specifically, I can't remember who it was, but I feel like I heard NBA Youngboy singing this exact same cadence and melody in one one of the ones. It was one of the like younger dudes that I really mess with, and I'm like, this is the exact same melody. Like, man, I really feel like this is, you know what I mean? There seems to be some sort of connection. Yeah, but definitely in the style and something about that style.
Just that kind of, I guess, devil may care, buck against authority, wild kind of behavior. And it's funny because when I think back to like the music that we, like, I feel like even in like go-go, we had a dance called the Rough It Off that was kind of similar to like what's done in a mosh pit and stuff, where we go crazy and like, elbows flying, we bumping into each other, letting loose that rage and, kind of anger that we felt, angst that we felt. I feel like there's always been movements or moments within our music scenes where we have that kind of wild, rowdy, diving off stages, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And it's all black music anyway. Like it's all I mean, yeah, it's all black music anyway. So whether it's Onyx or Smashing Pumpkins or whatever, like it all comes from the same.
Right, because Jimmy was smashing guitars in the 60s.
Yeah.
And
yes, he was. Yeah, it's crazy. I was just listening to Are You Experienced today. And the song Are You Experienced, I never realized that the thing from the Far Side, that like backwards drum thing, is from Jimi Hendrix. At the beginning when it's
wow.
Like I thought they played something backwards. I'm like, yo, like they came on today and I'm like, that's crazy. I never knew that connection. So what, I know at some point theater becomes part of your expression. And, I've heard you talk about Hasanatu Karama, which I don't know, I'm sure you probably know, but that name means beautiful miracle.
Hasanatu?
Yeah. Well, so Hasanat is the Arabic name, but in West Africa, they pronounce all of the parts of the language, of the Arabic language that the Arabs cut off. So they would say Hasanat, which is like the feminine version of Hassan. But they say Hasanatu. So they say like Fatimatu, for like Fatima, they would say Fatimatu. Do you know my sister, Fatimatu? You know what I mean? And then, so that's beautiful. And then Karama means miracle. I was just thinking about like the beautiful miracle that this woman was in your life. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So could you talk about just like her insistence on getting you out of your shell and getting you to use your voice and just step into the fullness of your thing?
Yeah, she was the first person to recognize all this power that I was suppressing. I always had this secret part of myself when I was at home in my room that was bold and empowered and loud, and but that person very often came out in public, of course around my friends and stuff like that, but anything involving expression, unfettered expression, that was challenging for me. And I remember coming back to that school and being new and being shy and being thrust right into this performance that we had. And the first performance was, we did a still pulse song or whatever. And like, that was my first exposure to like performing, whatever. But after I'd been at the school for a while, we had a performance of Ego Trippin', Nikki Giovanni's poem Ego Trippin', that talks about the brilliance and beauty and major involvement of Black women, African women throughout history's major moments, iconic moments, and so she gave me the part of this piece to perform, and I was comfortable with the poem because I had grown up. My parents had the record, so I knew the poem, but it was the act of performing it in front of people who I didn't know well. And I was very self-conscious about what I was doing with my body and, just what was going on around me. And I remember very distinctly there was a mirror, and I kept looking at myself in the mirror, just very self-conscious, looking to see what I was doing, to see if I looked okay, if I looked stupid or whatever. And she yelled at me. This woman can cuss like a sailor.
In school.
And yeah, we had a swear jar in our school and everything.
Dope.
But because she was so brilliant, they didn't they let her just do her thing because this woman was amazing. She's like a performing arts whisperer. But she yelled at me and cursed, stop looking in the mirror. Stop looking in the mirror. She cursed out the people who were giggling and sniggling about, my, the way I was moving my body and stuff. And y'all shut up and you zone everybody out. You are talking about, I turn myself into myself and was Jesus meant in tone, my loving name. Be that power. Step into the fullness of that glorious woman, that glorious being, that divinity, and know that you are comfortable there. And she would tell me, and I remember that it was like a light bulb going off. One, that I felt seen, that I felt acknowledged that I was capable of something powerful, because I didn't know that before. I knew that I liked certain things. I liked to sing. I liked to write poetry, but I didn't know that I was able to do it powerful, that I was a force. And she impressed that upon me every chance she got. And she was always telling me, you are so brilliant. You are so powerful. You are so, be that, be that. And, this is a woman who, again, was best friends with Kwame Ture. This is a woman who was, had a main role in the movie Sankofa. She was an actress. Her father was a member he was a Garveyite. She was whip smart, just brilliant writer, married a dancer from Guinea, lived over there for some time. She lived a life. Dope. So when someone like that is able to see dopeness within you, this worldly woman who's seen everything, been around everyone, could tell you a tale and you have you just flummoxed at wow, she's experienced all this. When she tells you to stand in your power, when she tells you to not believe in a world that tells you not to believe in yourself, to disregard those forces that would like you to believe that you aren't capable of these magnificent things, you listen. And I kept her. She was my first exposure to being in stage plays, and I continued that after I left the school, and I ended up doing a community, taking part in a community theater group and doing some stuff in college as well. But yeah, she was the first woman who very boldly told me to understand who I was and what my legacy was. Because I wasn't just standing there on my own. I was standing there on the shoulders of all of these women who had come before me.
Yes.
And, who were lending me their strength as well.
That's right.
So.
And that suffered and sacrificed to be able to do it. And if you if you
Exactly.
drop it, then their sacrifice is for nothing. But if you pick it up, then they live forever.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I use my voice in memory and honor of those who weren't able to speak, you know, who were silenced, and then so forth and so on. You know, those who who are in subsequent generations who could be influenced by me in any regard use their voice and further the conversation, further the dialogue, and amplify the voice, the collective voice.
We've been talking for the past several weeks on the Travelers Podcast about the Zakat Foundation, and we're so honored to be in partnership with them. They're a really, truly, profoundly incredible global humanitarian relief organization that operates all over the world, all throughout Africa, the Middle East, Europe, the Americas, Asia. Really, really incredible organization that just does so many things. You know, I've been highlighting their program to give relief and aid to orphans around the world because that program is really amazing. But since we're talking about the Zakat Foundation, I just really wanted to share that and really encourage you to go and check them out on social media. Their handle is Zakat US. The website is zakat.org, Zakat. And just really want to encourage you to check out and consider them, you know, for your charitable giving. You know, all of us have something that we can share, whether it's a lot or a little bit. And the purifying and really cleansing and opening and welcoming spirit of giving and sharing, of charity, of giving something back is a really profound reality. It's one of the things that we believe in the Islamic tradition, that if we have a lot, if we have extra, you know, if we even have enough, you know, most of the time what we think is enough is actually extra. The relationship that we have with scarcity and abundance is something that we need to constantly be checking in with. A lot of times we feel like, okay, I guess I have enough. The reality is that if we look at it from a different perspective, we've actually got extra. And a lot of times when we're in that situation, we give because we want to purify what we have. And when we feel like we're in a position of scarcity or we're looking to stretch, you know, money is funny and change is strange. It's one of those things that people think that because they see me on stage and I got these social media followers, that's not something that I deal with. I deal with that a lot. I mean, do not get it twisted. I never want to complain about, you know, the level of sustenance that we have, because for several reasons. One, because I believe that God gave it to me, and I have been able to support myself and my family for 20 years doing what I love. But then also, you guys are the ones that are helping to provide it. So I never want to, you know, diminish it or disparage it, you know. But the reality is that I come across situations all the time, especially in the pandemic, where it's like, all right, how are we going to stretch? How are we going to make it work? And in those cases, it's you know, to give to others and to help others in those times of need is something that really opens up so much. It opens up our mind. It opens up, you know, the gates of giving and receiving. And so to give is really important. I really encourage you to check out Zakat US on social media, zakat.org. They do such amazing work around the world. And this, you know, program to support orphans is just one of them. But they do so much to provide water to people, food security to people all over the world, education, health, and all around well-being, you know, so much to support people in their education, in the furthering of education for children and women and families around the world is really incredible. So, you know, really happy to be in partnership with the Zakat Foundation. Check them out, Zakat US and zakat.org. Really grateful and honored to say that the Travelers Podcast is brought to you by and in partnership with the great public intellectual and public healer and public teacher and therapist named Resmaa Menakem. His name and his work has come up several times on this podcast. Resmaa is somebody that I've seen as a patient, as a client. I also saw him together with my son. Resma's work really deals a lot with and focuses on the reality of trauma and the way that trauma is stored in and is housed in our bodies in this prolonged experience of fight and flight and freeze, and the ways that affects our bodies and lives in our bodies, and also the ways that this trauma over time, he says, in individuals looks like personality. In groups, trauma over time looks like culture. Trauma is passed down, from generation to generation, and it lives in groups. And so Resma talks and teaches us so much about the reality of trauma, but also with particular focus to racialized trauma. If you get a chance, please, I cannot recommend his book, My Grandmother's Hands. It's available on audiobook and also in paperback. My Grandmother's Hands deals with racialized trauma and embodied racialized trauma. So often we think and we talk about, race and race relations in terms of, theoretical concepts. And to be certain, there are theoretical concepts there. We have the myth of white supremacy, which actually Resma calls and reframes as white-bodied advantage. And he talks about, reframing white privilege as white body advantage. And, these realities that our bodies have been, indoctrinated, and we've been impacted by the racial energy and the charge of race so that we respond to each other in certain ways. So Resma talks to bodies that are called white and to bodies of culture, bodies of color, and also talks about the relationship with the police. All of this is in his New York Times best-selling book called My Grandmother's Hands. Resma's been on Oprah. He's been on The Breakfast Club. He's been on Charlemagne the God's show, The God's Honest Truth. He's been on Dr. Phil. Resma did work in Afghanistan, with troops, serving the troops in the military. Really amazing work. Specifically here to talk about the fact that Resma has a new book coming out on April 12th called The Quaking of America, an embodied guide to understanding this profound racial moment that we're in. Head to resma.com, RESMAA.com, and pre-order this book. It promises to be one that really addresses the need for healing in this moment and then also how to survive this moment. Resma talks a lot, very truthfully and very lovingly, to people of color, to bodies of culture, but then also to white bodies, and speaks to all of us in ways that really not only encourage healing, but really give us frameworks with which to heal and to be agents of real good and healing and togetherness in these moments. I can't say enough about Brother Resma. We look forward to having him on the show. But head to Resma, RESMAA.com, and pre-order The Quaking of America. All throughout this 20-year career that I've been so blessed and fortunate to have, what I see over and over again is that, this music brings together a group of people that support us and allow for us to be independent so that we can really be free in exploring myself and expressing myself. And what we find is that when I plunge the depths of my soul and give air and give voice to my own secrets and stories and imagination and reflections, that I find that I'm not alone. And the listeners find out that they're not alone. And so there's a deep connection between us that creates a community. And that community allows for people to be together and to support each other, but then also to support this work. There's no record label or big corporation or investors behind what we're doing. In my career as Brother Ali and also our work at Travelers Media. It really comes from and is made possible by your direct support, and so what we've done is, because of the fact, I'm on tour now, it seems to be going well. the reality is that I used to have to live on tour all the time and really rely on those shows as opportunities to bring people together and to also to generate and derive support. What we're doing now is we have what we call a caravan. If you go to brotherali.com in a section called Join, you can see that we use a platform that's something like Patreon. It's a little bit different platform for our specific needs, but it allows you to engage and to support on different levels. So head to brotherali.com in the section called Join and check out the ways that you can engage, with me and also with others. We have different levels there that allow for different levels of support, and then also ways to really build connection and to build community. At the highest tier, we have the trailblazers that are really in communication with each other and building community with one another. And it's a really, really profoundly beautiful thing to see. So check out brotherali.com in the section called Join and get down with this caravan. Who were the students that came to the Hard Rock Hotel that we did the show in DC? There was like young people that were your students.
Yeah, my best friend, who also went to Sankofa with me or Nation House, he and his mom run a school that's literally right around the corner from where we both grew up. And they were also a African-centered school, but they focused more heavily on the arts. And Mama Hassanatu, she actually taught there as well. But yeah, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I taught there, but it was the young children. Like I taught like the little 2-year-olds. They were so cute. But I would always come back to the school and, work with the children and like, cause we loved the movie Serafina, me and my best friend, Zaki. And so they put on the stage play of Serafina every year. So I would come and like consult with that and like just kind of speak to the kids, passing on, paying forward what Mama Hassanatu had done for me, like just talking to them about, how important it is for us to, own our individual power. And then also how important it is for us to voice our truth, all of this, that shyness doesn't get you paid. And that means literally and figuratively, meaning closed mouths don't get fed. There's so many like acts, there's so many sayings and things that
squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Exactly. Like this speaks to the importance of speaking your truth, being unafraid to tell your story, all of that, because, for many, many years, I felt that I was ashamed of some aspects of my story, my family history, and I felt that it was something that should be hidden away, and it wasn't until I was doing my own like self-exploration and self-reflection where upon examining certain aspects of myself, the darker parts, those hidden parts of myself, I discovered how liberating it was to, unearth those pieces, because that's how they get the light. That's how you get the light. That's how your light is coaxed out of you. You know what I mean? And so, just everything is just this interesting lesson when you just kind of look back on all of these steps that you take along your journey. And all of them are leading up to this current moment, but you don't realize it at the time.
Right.
And then, I'm just thinking back to when I'm talking to these young people and telling them these things, while not like actively doing them myself, but 10 years down the line, 8 years down the line, I discovered how powerful it is indeed for me to do that through my music and through my creative expression.
I think about specifically the Nikki Giovanni ego trip, and I turned myself into myself and was God or was And I think about, Goddess Gang and the Goddess MC. Like it's very evident that you've drawn so much power from having this understanding that I am a representation of the divine. Like I'm not here of myself. I am a representation of the divine.
Exactly.
So, and the spiritual power that it requires to stand there in the face of all this material power, of all of this, physical here and now. These people got all the power, they got all the guns, they got, a lot of the gold. Like Yasin said, the empire hold all the gold and the guns, but when all is said and done, there's only what?
There's only one.
La ilaha illallah. Oh man. So, I mean, can you just talk a little bit more? And I know that, when you were describing your home and the feelings of your parents and how they were drawing from so many different places, I just wonder how much of that record collection had to be Alice Coltrane. Like the way that you're describing it is like, that's Alex Coltrane all day. You know what I mean?
Alice,
she's like,
John.
Hey. Oh, man.
Pharoah Sanders, the creator has a master plan.
That's
like,
right.
It's...
yeah, Sun Ra.
It's huge. Sun Ra, yep. All of that.
So and you don't seem to have a particular, like, you seem very happy to draw inspiration, knowledge, wisdom, light from wherever it comes, and to be able to synthesize it. That's the beautiful. That's one of the many beautiful things that you do is you're able to draw from all of these streams that have poured into you and that are existing in the world, and to synthesize all of them into something that's really uniquely your own. Mm-hmm. So can you share with us some more about your relationship with the unseen?
The Creator has always been a very present force in my family that we've drawn upon in our toughest times, like so many. But because my parents always taught us that, and I've always grown to understand that there are lessons and teachings and truth anywhere you can find them. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if it's in a form that you believe is the exact opposite of what you believe or what you're aligned with. There is a kernel of something that you're supposed to learn, a lesson that you're supposed to learn from that thing, that experience, that encounter. And then when you look at particular spiritualities or spiritual studies deeply, you can find a connection, running through them all. Whether it's a particular representation, if you're talking about a spirituality that has, multiple deity representations, like you can find from Hinduism to the Ifa religion in West Africa, you can find this this connection or similarity between, this particular expression of the divine. And then, not to mention, when we were practicing our traditional religions here, but had to hide them, we were syncretizing the Catholic faith or Christian, idols or saints or gods with those of our gods that had similar attributes, and we were creating these new forms of worship, these new, new religions in a sense. And so when I was taught that, you pray before you go to sleep, but also you meditate to find clarity. And your meditation, your tools of meditation can come from Buddhism, it can come from Hinduism. And, there's not one particular, with all of these reflections of people on earth and different cultures and different parts of the globe that we're in, there's not one representation of what the Creator is or is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And so it's people's interpretation of what their divinity looks like. And so for me, I've always known that, we are literally a reflection of the divine, and that power, it courses through me, it courses through my veins. And if we understand that we are an expression of that, I liken it to, this, I liken it to a drop of water out of an ocean, same elements, but just a smaller version of this grand resource, but collectively these drops of water can have the same power as this ocean. And so that's always been important to me to understand and express that and vocalize that, because when we think about that resource, forget the gold, forget, silver, any precious gems or whatever. When we think about a resource as powerful as that, as all light, all love, all strength, all knowing, having access to that, when we have the proper tools to tap into that, the proper text to tap into that, the proper teachings, is the most powerful thing you can be,
right? Right.
So,
and in fact, those trinkets are really just symbols of the diamond that is the truth. Those symbols, those are just symbols and reminders and reflections of what's there, and that people get caught up in the reflection and not realize that this thing is just here to remind us of the real gold, the real riches, the real diamonds, the real. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So,
absolutely.
Then at some point you end up going to Howard.
Hate you. Yeah. But I'm gonna tell you this: it wasn't my first choice, and I say that because I wanted to leave DC. I was tired of DC. I loved Howard. Like, Howard was the first place I saw a step show. Howard was the first place that I met Doodlebug from Diggable Planets.
Oh man!
When I was still in high school, he came to Howard's campus and was trying to recruit like b-boys and like different people within like hip hop that explored like different facets of hip hop. And I remember like meeting him and being like, "Oh my God, that's Doodlebug! I get to meet like a rap star. I'm in high school, you know what I mean?" So like that was an amazing experience for me. And even though Howard wasn't my first choice, when I got there, I fell in love because, of course, we had homecoming, we had the Yard Fest.
Yeah, those Howard homecomings were legendary.
Legendary. They rap about them.
Yeah.
We're in rap songs.
Yeah. Where did you want to go?
Yeah. I just wanted to be in either California or New York. So I said NYU and UCLA, not knowing anything about those schools, but they're, popular schools. So yeah, that's what I said. But it was more based on the cities than the schools themselves.
And then at what point does Atlanta become the move?
Atlanta became the move because New York was too expensive.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Again, wanting to get out of DC, just wanting to move. I've always I've never been like tethered to one particular place. I've always envisioned myself as being a person of the world. So like when I was old enough and ready to go, I was like, y'all, I want to move to New York. You couldn't even find a place without a broker. The brokers wanted all this money. I was like, this ain't gonna work. My siblings were already down in Atlanta, so I ended up moving down there. And, not knowing, I had left school early, everybody was up in arms about that. Had no idea what I wanted to do in life. I just knew that I wanted to do something different. And Atlanta used to have this festival called the Auburn Festival. And it was this festival they had downtown. They would have like local acts and stuff perform and like vendors and stuff like that. And I remember being down there, and this was my first exposure to like the South. Like my family is from my family's from Virginia, but it's a totally
the South,
different.
But Atlanta is the South.
Atlanta is the South.
with three F's.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I remember hearing these brothers talking, and I thought they were speaking a different language. Like I literally, like, you know, I listened to Outkast. I loved Outkast.
Right.
Like Outkast was like, and you know, but their accents were easier for me to understand. Of course, there was some stuff that went over my head and stuff like that. But like, I was not ready for Atlanta. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa. Like, it's just so amazing how vast and, you know, just diverse this country is, and like our blackness is.
Right.
And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be real interesting. When I heard, you know, those brothers talking, I was like, first of all, that's going to take a little bit for me to get used to. And
you became an anthropologist. What language is this?
Yeah,
it appears to be some sort of native patois, of which I'm unfamiliar.
Like, right. Like, what did he say? What does
you know, it's
that
ill because
mean?
me and you have both like spent time in West Africa. I mean, you know, within a 5-mile radius, there are 17 tribes that each have a different language. And then they'll have one that they all speak. There'll be a language that everybody knows because it might be the dominant one. You know what I mean? So maybe everybody knows some Mandinka or some or Fulani or something like that. And then people know like French or whoever colonized, you know. But the number of different languages that don't even share words.
I know. And I remember when I would meet like people from different countries, Africa and stuff, I would feel so dumb because they'd be like, yeah, I know casually. I know 6 or 7 languages.
Nothing.
Because it was like my mom knows 3, my dad knows 3. I know, you know, 2, you know, there's the national language, you know, it's just, we know nothing. And when we think of this world,
that scene in Muhammad Ali when we were kings. When he's flying, when they're on the plane, it's like, this brother knows French, English, you know what I mean, and is African. We don't even speak English that good.
That's a fact. That's a fact. But what's so cool, speaking of Senegal, is how like hip hop, that thing that we created here in this country, Black people created here in this country, has become a universal language of sorts.
Absolutely.
And I remember going to Senegal. You know, I remember going to this beach in Senegal, and I knew like very little French, not really enough to communicate. I knew no Wolof, like, you know, basic things like Nangadef and Jerajef and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah,
you'd be like, wait, what's negative?
Mangifi?
No, Nangadef.
Right, yeah. Nangadef, Mangifi, yeah.
Bake.
This brother was speaking in Wolof, and we were trying to, you know, use our hands and, you know, to communicate. And I remember us telling him that we were from the United States, and he just busts out in this Tupac rap. And I don't remember what the rhyme was.
Oh man, I wish you did. Can
I know, I wish I did.
Can we say it's Hail Mary?
Hail Mary. Come with me. Yeah, and I was just amazed and pleased, and just, we think about, you know, our experience in a diaspora, and when we go over there trying to find connection, and sometimes trying to force connection, you know, with our home, and for something to happen like that so organically, to just kind of forge that connection so naturally, was really, really beautiful. And it just really just spoke to how powerful, you know, that cultural, that ancestral DNA is, and, you know, how we can't, if we wanted to, we can't escape that, you know, and I definitely don't want to.
How long did it take you to figure out that wow means yes?
Oh,
people to be talking like there's like just going and going and going, and brothers standing, wow. Yeah. You're like, man, he must be saying something major. It's like, no, he's just saying, yeah, okay, yeah. You know what's crazy is like, well, it's just amazing and beautiful that you know, so many things that I've witnessed in West Africa, you see them appear in Black American culture, but oftentimes it's like, now it's through the lens of generational trauma and, all types of stuff. So it shows up in different ways. We went to, I was in the Gambia visiting my Sheikh Muhammad Jailani, and he says, like, we're gonna go to an event out in the countryside, and it's gonna be an all night thing. Mm-hmm. So he's like, get some rest. I'm like, all right. Ooh. So we go to this thing, and there's like the prominent religious teachers are talking, and one of them just took a break in his talking. Like, he had the microphone, everything. He just took a short break, and this blind man stood up and just started singing like these praise songs for the Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, this is dope. But he just interrupted the sheikh. Like, this is cool. Okay. And then like women came up and they had bags. They had these like silk or like satin bags with ones in them. And they were like throwing them at the man. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, this blind man, like, this is what he does. Like, okay, this is dope. And then he had like his like nephew or son or somebody like that was like picking it up and like putting it in his pocket while he was singing. And then he sits down. And then the sheikh this is like, oh, as I was saying, you know what I mean? And then he stops for a second, and somebody else, another man, stands up. And he's singing like a song to the sheikh and about the Prophet Muhammad and about and then women come up and they got a bag and they start throwing. And I start realizing there's like there's different techniques. They throw the money differently according to how they're feeling the spirit. But it's basically like they're making it rain on these men. You know what I'm saying? But this is all like a communal, cultural, spiritual, religious practice. You know what I mean? And you just see like how this showed up in our, like once it went through the lens of, are you familiar with Resmaa Menakem, the therapist?
No.
He really, he has a book called My Grandmother's Hands, really amazing therapist and specializes in trauma and specifically racialized trauma. He saw me and Fahim as he was our therapist. And then I saw him a little bit myself as well. But he says that when these type of traumatic events are blown through our bodies and we hold them in our bodies, over a while we start to enter this trauma loop. You know what I mean? Where we're constantly reenacting, and over time those things start to look like, in individuals it starts to look like a personality, and in people it starts to look like culture. But really, this is just the reaction to generations of inherited trauma. And so yeah, it's just really amazing when you see those practices,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even growing up, like doing African dance, like if a woman is, killing it, women will come up and put $1 on her forehead and throw money, and it's not like sexualized or anything like that. It's just how we show our appreciation for the arts, and and someone who is caught up or being an exemplary emissary of this like culture, embodiment of this culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so interesting. I need to get back to Senegal myself.
Yeah, man. And you just see, like, I just saw this like blind man like go home with pockets full of money, and no one person like broke the bank to do that. Mm-hmm. Like everybody in the village, is making probably has around the same amount of resources. But the fact that like this person stands up and reminds us of who we are, and reminds us of the best of who we are and our stories and the great leaders that we have, and our spiritual religious figures. And so we just take care of them. We just like show the appreciation in that way. And you look at now, and like this ridiculous, just demonic force called the music industry that we have to navigate. You know what I mean? To try to do that same thing where like, they're saying that here's somebody that they're being rewarded for the fact that this person reminds us of the best of who we are. You know what I mean? Where now if you do that, you have to fight so hard to even be recognized that like that this music has any value at all.
Yeah. It's so funny, especially since what hip hop was. It was like only the best of the best. There were so many gauntlets that you had to like go through and survive through to prove yourself worthy of being the, all city if you're a graph artist, or being like the dopest MC or whatever. And like those were the people who were lauded, celebrated, because they went through training.
Right.
They were properly educated. And now those same people who like have a dedication and devotion to their craft and being the best at what they do, those are the people who are like, y'all doing too much.
Yeah.
Don't nobody want to hear all that.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that excellence is like that just makes me too much.
Yeah, because I think there's this interesting phenomenon of, if instead of seeing someone great and that person being inspirational, and you look at them as like something to aspire to, and like, ooh, I want to do that, I want to get there eventually. I think we live in a culture now where seeing someone great makes us see the worst in ourselves or what we feel we aren't. And we push those people to the side. And we have begun settling for, well, not even settling for, just settling in general. I think because just the system of capitalism in and of itself is, it's based upon this lie of hard work, but really the people who benefit most from capitalism are the people who do the least work and exploit the hard workers. You know what I mean? So I think when we think of work, the work that has to go, the sacrifice that goes into achieving a certain level of excellence, it makes us tired because we work hard enough as it is, and we're told in so many different ways that we're not good enough from so many different directions. So when we see this and we see what we aren't, or what we feel we aren't capable of, or we're not at that level, it kind of sparks some insecurity within ourselves. And I think that for me, it's really important for me to speak to that through my music and talk about how, just as I'm capable of this, you're capable of this.
And that's and that's what happens when, when you talk about the reality of, going into those dark little secret places of yourself and allowing yourself to explore yourself in that way and then express those things. Because when people hear those, they know that they're not alone. Like somebody else has my secrets. And they don't even have to be exactly the same. It's just like if it even reminds me of my secret. It doesn't, you know what I'm saying? If it even reminds me of my...
Yeah, whatever you share that reminds people that you're human as well. I mean, because I think that this cult of celebrity, it tells us to worship people as these perfect, unachievable models of, humanity, and when people see someone who's like, wow, that person is dope, he or she is dope, but also they're just like me because they survived this thing and they were able to push through that and still be brilliant, and I can possibly do that too.
Yeah, it's like when you mentioned your teacher. So I think I mispronounced her name. Is it Hasanatu or Hasanatu?
No, it's Hasanatu. I was calling her Mama
Hasanatu. Okay.
Yeah.
So Hasan also means, there's other words for beauty as well in the Arabic language. So like Jamil and Jamila is beauty as well, or Jamal. But Hasana deals with a beauty that's because of excellence and even perfection, even something close to perfection. And when you think about like what she was able to do for you, because of the fact that you're looking at her and like, this is this woman that she's traveled the world and she's powerful and, speaks these languages and all of these things. And then she's seeing something in you. I mean, it's really like I had the blessing of touring with you for I mean, both of those legs of the tour was like stretched out over almost 6 months. And this is even before Sharecropper's Daughter. This is before what I consider to be your opus, up to this point, where you know what I'm saying? So when we were on tour, Forever wasn't even out yet. Goddess Gang wasn't out yet. Hand of God wasn't out yet. Something like none of these joints were out. And so this was just the body of work that you had prior to that. And, watching women in particular watch you, like I saw them change. I saw their posture change. I saw the way that they were holding their bodies change. I saw the ways that their eyes lit up, when you were doing your thing. And it's such and it really, you think about like you being shy, that like your natural state, you naturally incline towards shyness unless you know people. You know what I mean? Like a couple weeks in that van, it's like that shyness is out the window, and then like, you know what I mean? And then you start getting all of the,
get loose.
Yeah. Right. I'm saying I think that a lot of people wouldn't know how funny you are and how nerdy you are, and how silly you can be and all this. This is really, really, really dope. But so like you're the you said I'm not the typical rap chick, I'm pick of the litter type to pick up a mic, become a mythical figure. Like that's something that's really born out of a sense of duty. That like you're duty bound to do that because of what it allows for other people. So I'm curious about, so you already had these different performance elements in your life. You're doing theater. And then was there also like a point where you were doing poetry? Was that like part of your practice as well, like early Atlanta? Because I know at some point you meet Soul Messiah. Right. But you were already on the mic in some kind of way, right?
No. No, I didn't do like spoken word or anything like that. I wrote like poetry for myself. But I never did spoken word.
Were you leading spiritual? I've seen a video of you where you look like 16, like leading a spiritual gathering or something like that. Were you like teaching or like?
I don't know. What's that video?
Messiah showed me a video
of you. That video.
And you looked really like young in the video. And
what was I doing?
I felt like you were doing poetry or speaking, but like there was a room full of people, and I know that speaking was part of it. And he was saying like, this I saw it. This is like he was telling me like what he saw in you and what made him know that you were an amazing MC.
I don't know. I have to like look back at that and see what I was doing. But yeah, Atlanta, I didn't do anything on the mic until after, Soul Messiah and I had linked up, and we played around in the studio. I ended up recording some stuff just out of vanity, and he told me it was good. And I was like, okay, that was all I needed to hear. Let's play around some more. And we ended up recording my first EP. But I didn't end up getting on the mic until at a Matulu Shakur fundraiser. And I guess like the way I see things, I don't really like, I'm not one of those people who like dream of this future and plan out my future. I just kind of like take things as they come. I guess that's my parents' like Eastern spiritual teachings. We had a book called Be Here Now, and it was just like be in the present moment, all that. And so, I didn't even think about, okay, if you're recording music, you're eventually going to have to perform it. I totally did not make that connection in my mind. I'm thinking I'm just playing around. But apparently Messiah had been telling people that, we're doing the music thing, and he didn't tell me. And they called me up to the mic. They called me up to the mic at this Matul Shakur thing, and I ended up performing one of my songs. And, at that time, everything was very like, it's still like that in many ways, but like, it was kind of like a spoken word piece, I think, the way that I performed it. But seeing in feeling how people responded to me, I think it brought me back to the days of the theater and, you know, when I was doing plays and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, like, even though I'm nervous, like I used to get so nervous on stage, like, you know, sick to my stomach and all kinds of stuff. And even though I'm extremely nervous, I feel a sense of comfort being on stage and delivering this in this particular way. Like, I feel powerful. Like, I remember, because so many years I hadn't done anything in the creative arts in between my early college days and moving down to Atlanta. And I remembered that. And I was like, yo, like, okay, this isn't so bad. Maybe I can do this again. And it was so cool because at that time in Atlanta, there was this huge independent music scene. And along with the activist scene there and the cultural community, all places that I felt really familiar with because I grew up in DC. And all of that was like really connected. So I was around all these dope MCs. I was, and they were all like really autonomous. Like, it wasn't a community that was dependent upon like promoters and stuff like that. Everybody was throwing their own shows. They had their own nights and all these little dope little cliques and crews and stuff in Atlanta. And I was like, yo, this is dope. Like, I was working in the natural foods industry, and going from that and then just like immersing myself in this world where I was learning about how to be an MC and having all of these examples of like how you perform and like, you know, and there were a lot of women too, which was really super dope. Especially at a time where in like mainstream music, there weren't a lot of like a whole bunch of women who were, you know, super popular at that time. But there were a whole bunch of women, Book, Brown Star, you know, Rita J, Khalila Ali, that were all like, you know, just kind of doing their thing in Atlanta. And it was a way for me to get my bars up and my writing up real quick. It's like I had a crash course, because I think I was telling you before, like, I didn't, like, I loved hip hop, but that wasn't like a central part of like my musical, like,
right. It's just one of the many seasonings in the meal.
Right. So I wasn't the one that grew up writing raps and, you know, I knew all the lyrics to this Nas song, or no, I wasn't that one. I had like a few people who I loved and latched on to, and, you know, I knew their lyrics, the Fugees and Outkast and KRS-One and stuff, but so I felt like I was playing catch up. And it was so crazy because it was literally like the universe was like, let me clear this path for you. Because as soon as I started like getting my sea legs, I was getting opportunities to like open up for like pioneers, like Cold Crush, Black Sheep, Brand Nubian, like all these people, and like I was getting placed with these people. And I was like, and Messiah would be like, yo, I don't think you understand like how like profound this is. Like I knew who Black Sheep was,
right.
You know, I knew who Brand Nubian were, but Cold Crush Brothers not so much, you know. And then he had to like show me, you know, Wild Style and you know what I mean, movies and that I grew to love. And, you know, I grew to understand the importance of like these different groups. But like then like Sa-Roc called me on the phone out of the blue and was talking to me about how much she appreciates me and what I do and loves my music. And I'm like, what? How is this happening to me?
Right.
And then I had to go back to what Mama Hasnatu said and was like, do you know who you are?
Yeah, because you're dope.
Like, understand who you are. Understand who you
That's
are.
right.
Even if you don't see it, we see
That's
it.
right.
But
it's
we
not your
need
job
you
to see it. It's just your job to just do you and just be yourself.
Yeah, just do it.
Right.
Do it.
Did you ever have so I don't know if I've known a person that goes from being like a private person to being someone on stage that now people know. So anybody, it's like people talk about what is fame, and like, you know, it's all relative. There's different levels of famous. So there are people that'll be like, Brother Ali, it's different because you're famous. And I'm like, I know Dave Chappelle, he's famous. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm famous at my show. But like, if I walk a block in any direction, nobody knows who the hell I'm just a KFC man if I walk one block from here. But
not the KFC man.
Santa Claus and the KFC man, and you know. But man, yo, everywhere I've been, everywhere in the world. First of all, black people everywhere are just like, yeah, albinos are from us. Everywhere I've been in the world, but everywhere else I go, people always talk about KFC. I was on Hajj.
They what?
People talk about KFC. People talk about KFC, like Colonel Sanders.
That's so weird. I never would have. I had to like think.
Especially
like,
once I grew the little
why
beard, I was just like, man, I really like this beard very much, but I don't think this is helping.
But this gotta go.
No, actually, my beard got lost in translation the other day. I went to because Turkish barbers are dope. Like, they're really good. And I went in the other day and I was like, oh, babe, make it longer. And I think he just misunderstood. So he was like, okay. I was just like, yo, what are you doing?
That's the opposite of what I wanted.
And he immediately felt so bad. Like, he could see on my face and he was like, is it okay? And I was like, I was trying to make longer. And he was like, I make a big mistake. And I was like, it's okay.
No.
It's okay. But,
oh man.
Yeah. But man, everywhere I go, like, Africans always recognize albinos. Everywhere. Yeah. What I was thinking is, you know, everybody that I've known that's gone from, almost everybody that goes from, you know, I'm just a face in the crowd, to being somebody who people know me but I don't know them. Like, that's going to be some degree of famous. And most people have a moment or some stretch of time where they lose their mind a little bit, because the ego is just like, I've been waiting for this day. You know what I'm saying? So when you were like, you punch people, Brendan and Slug and everybody that was with me on my first tour knows that I was not used to I became Muslim at 15. I'm from North Minneapolis. I was not used to being around drunk, partying white guys. And I didn't understand that, like, when they were in your space and stuff, I thought I was like, oh, we're about to fight. You know what I mean? And so there were times where I would just be like, okay, you know, but also I was losing my mind a little bit. Did you ever have, even if it was very private and even if it was very classy and it was very, like, have you ever felt the ego trying to just be like a star, like, or like, because I've never seen it. Like, we made it through that whole, like, 50 some city tour together, and I never saw a single moment where I felt like you were doing what most people do on their first long tour, which is like, you know. But I just wonder, like, what's that balance, or what's that dance been like for you? The spirit, the sense of duty, you know, the reflection of God. But then also, I mean, a human being has an ego in there, and it's always trying to do its thing too. So what's that like for you?
You know, I know this is probably going to sound unbelievable, but no, not in the way you're probably thinking. Not in the way that you're thinking. Mm-hmm. I think I am always so in awe that this is my life that I never even think that, like, I'm always humbled by this experience of being able to perform and write, and like people respond to it and they love it and they support me. That there's never been a moment where I feel like, you over there, bring me my cake. You know what I'm saying? Where are my roses? Because I'm just so like happy to be in the room. You know, I'm just so happy, you know, and I think that because I've seen the ugliness, I've seen people who they're not that you should be like that when you get quote unquote famous, but it'll be people who are not even close to that level.
I'm right here.
That'll just be
I can hear you. You know I can hear you.
No, it's not you. It's not you. It's not you. I swear I'm not talking about you.
Like they're not even that famous.
No, I swear I'm not talking about. No, but you had a moment when we were on tour. No, you didn't have a moment, but there was a moment when I was like, damn, Ali got the juice. Remember when we were in New Orleans and we went to that restaurant, and the restaurant was
No, I don't remember this. I think you're thinking of.
Can I share?
I think you're thinking of your other albino Muslim friends.
No, no, we were. This place was full, and the person recognized you and was like,
okay.
right this way.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and they were like, right this way. And I always wondered in my mind, like, how does he feel right now? Is he flexing on the inside real quick? Like, like how did that make you feel?
Yeah, no, those things do happen. Yeah, those things do happen. And, yeah, I mean, I think I'm at a place that's closer to you now. You know what I mean? I don't, I think on my first tour, I struggled. And I don't think that I struggled on some like, I am great, even though I definitely have that. Like I've always believed that I was supposed to be on the mic and everyone was supposed to be listening to me. Like I've always, since I was a little kid. And I tell a story all the time about I saw KRS-One give a lecture when I was 13, asked a question, he brought me on stage. And I remember standing on the stage next to KRS looking at the audience and like, this is like my favorite MC who's also giving a lecture. And I was like, yep, this is what I am too. This is what me and KRS are.
Oh, wow.
Like
that's great.
I've always had that feeling. But when you say that you're always genuinely, when you say it would sound unbelievable that you're always genuinely grateful and in awe of the moment, I believe that that's true. I know that that's true because I've witnessed you in those moments, and I've seen, times where you have very clearly stolen the show, and you very clearly, and it's very, very true. And the word for that in the Islamic tradition is saint. When a person is closer to witnessing the hand of God than they are they're not seeing themselves. They're seeing God. They're seeing God. They're not seeing themselves, because it's the ego's job to be obsessed with self and with the smaller thing. You know what I mean? And it's the soul's job to always recognize the reality of the situation. So, yeah, I believe that. I've seen it.
Now, I'm gonna say I do take a long time to get ready, so that could be like my little diva moments or whatever, where people are waiting on me, and that's literally not just because I feel like people should be waiting for me, but it's because I just take a long ass time to get ready, and
This is also true.
You have witnessed this firsthand. Mm-hmm. We'd be battling each other, trying to get to the tour van on time.
Oh, dude!
I'd be like, oh my God, I made it before I leave. Oh, thank God.
Yeah. No, me and you were definitely we were always the last. We would always be one of the last.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's interesting too, because in a modern context, when people dress well, people are dressing for themselves. So there's self-aggrandizement in a modern narcissistic world. But for people who come from community and from culture, we don't dress for ourselves. We dress for our company. We dress to honor the people that that we're with and the assignment. So in that sense, I don't think there's anything wrong. I think that's part of the artistic expression. I think it's part of the ceremony of it. That there's not a ceremony that doesn't come with some sort of, that when I step into these clothes, you know what I mean? This indicates that I'm in a different mode now. And it has nothing to do with vanity. Vanity has no role in it. It's deep. There's like thousands of mosques in Istanbul, and they all have an imam whose job it is to lead the prayer. And some of them in the bigger mosques are employees, like full-time employees, that's all they do. But in the smaller mosques, like in the neighborhood, there are sometimes people who most of the time lead the prayer, but sometimes it'll be somebody that comes in off the street, but everybody in that neighborhood knows who should lead the prayer if they're there. And so I've seen people, and they come in and they put on like the robe, and then they put on it's a pre-tied like turban and hat that they put on when they're leading the prayer. And I've seen, man, there was this one guy that came in off the street one time, and he had on the clothes of like a garbage collector. But he went over to the thing and he put the thing on, and he put the turban on, and he went and read the prayer. It was beautiful, one of the most beautiful things I've seen.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so I don't think that, I think that some, like what you're talking about is part of the ceremony, like, being the master of ceremony. I think that's an important thing. Why you're wearing a 12-year-old boy's, Pakistani boy's, wedding garment. I mean, that's a different thing, but you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
But that's, each his own.
Listen. You can get fly from all walks of life, all age ranges.
Oh,
I'm just letting you know right now. If it fits, I'm wearing it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's dope. If you're a regular around here, you know that we've been talking for the past several weeks about vicegerent, makers and merchants of fine tailored clothing for men. And we've talked a lot about what it means to wear clothing, that's sourced in ways that are ethical and that are sustainable and made by people with a certain intention. But I wanted to highlight this week a little bit about the idea of, dressing a certain way and dressing up a little bit. One of the things that I think we've come to believe in modern times is that we're dressing for ourselves, and that the way that we dress is really just about us. So we talk about the fact that, people say, well, I don't want to dress up because I'm not a diva. I'm not a narcissist. I'm not trying to draw attention to myself. But one of the things that pre-modern people understood is that all of us are struggling with our better nature that requires a lot of intention and diligence and discipline and hard work. All of us are wrestling with the human condition, that to be our better selves requires a lot of encouragement. It's easier to slide downward. It's easier to trend downward. And the ways that we engage in public with each other and in community with each other, the ways that we show up, absolutely create environments where when we get in the deep water or when we get in rough water, do we get pulled into the undertow, to the undercurrent so that we drown, or do we get pushed back on shore so that we can get cleaned up and stand back up again and get back on our feet? And the trends in society, the trends in community have a lot to do with that. And one of the things that traditional people believe, and specifically the Muslims really believe this, is that when we use beautiful language, when we beautify spaces, when we dress a certain way, when we present ourselves a certain way, when there's a level of refinement that trends upward, part of what we're doing is we're giving public encouragement to be our better selves. So that the inner struggle that we have going on in ourselves versus our higher selves and our lower selves, that we're offering encouragement for it to move up, to evolve, to refine ourselves and our relationships with the fight to improve upon ourselves and to improve upon the situation that we're in. And so the way that we dress, very specifically, it does a lot to send a message to ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Western suit, doesn't necessarily have to be any one particular uniform. But the reality of giving special attention to How do I want to present myself? When we put on a certain uniform, when we put on certain clothes, there are certain clothes that pull us down into leisure, into being, easy, into being lazy, versus when we put on clothes that are asking us to refine and to elevate. And when we do that, we send a message to ourselves about the way that we're going to step into the assignments of today, the moment of today. And it also sends a message to the people around us. There are some people that, if you've ever dressed up, that when you walk into a place, people deal with you differently. Their posture changes. Your posture changes. The language that they start to use, the intention that they start to put into things. We literally can elevate or pull down the energy of a place that we walk into based on the way that we prepare ourselves. And so, I cannot encourage us enough to, in general, be intentional about the ways that we show up. Also, there's the whole issue of the energy and the sustainability and the ethics of the clothes that we wear, So head to Vicegerent Official. The best way in my mind to check in with them is to follow them on Instagram. Check out my dear brother Usman the Tailor and his incredible work. And you'll see, if you scroll through, if you follow them, you'll see on their stories, you'll see in their posts, all different people, all different walks of life, different skin tones, different body shapes, different work that people do. And you'll see the way that Usman and his team really, literally tailor each piece and each garment and each look and each intention and each vibe to the person that they're working with. So very honored to be joined by Vicegerent Official on the Travelers Podcast. Travelers Podcast is in partnership with and sponsored by UPF, Unity Productions Foundation. This is a group of cultural creators that get together to not only make amazing pieces of art that tell really beautiful and profound stories, but also they have a program of giving back. So Unity Productions is the organization. UPF is Unity Productions Foundation, and that's their work to give back as cultural workers, as curators, as artists. Specifically, they have a program called Unfold Your Own Myth, which I'm honored and grateful to be a participant and a contributor in that program. This basically is a group of writers, songwriters, poets, speakers, that are and authors that are together to really encourage young people around the world that your story matters and that you matter, and the wisdom you've gleaned from your story is useful to people. And so you are worth, and your journey in this life is worth exploring and expressing and documenting. And not only your story in terms of your autobiography and your narrative, but also your imagination. The things that you imagine are going to be shaped and formed by who you are and also what your journey has been. And so head to upf.tv/unfold, and they have this amazing seminar that you can bring if you're a youth worker, if you're a community worker, if you bring people together, if you've got teams, if you're a manager of people, if you're a leader of people, if you've got a community project. Head to upf.tv/unfold and check out Unfold Your Own Myth. When you talk about, the people that are kind of in the people that have inspired you, the MCs, the great MCs that have inspired you and become part of your style, I definitely hear Black Thought. I definitely hear Andre. I definitely hear KRS-One. Are there people that have come along later? Because there's times where I'm like, is there a little bit of Kendrick in there? But are there people that have come along like since you've been an artist that influence you? Like not only inspire you or impress you, but that where some of what they do starts to inform what you do?
I wouldn't say inform. I would just maybe say I feel like Jay Electronica is one who kind of validated what I was already kind of into. Because when I first started, I was heavily incorporating a lot of sci-fi elements, a lot of mysticism stuff, I always, because I grew up in a community surrounded by, a lot of beautiful Muslim people and, all of that. I've always incorporated Islamic kind of words and kind of concepts in a lot of my music. But I think that when I discovered him, or when Messiah turned me on to him, I was like, oh yeah, like I can run with this. Like these are all the things that I'm already super digging and into, and this gives me, in a way, permission to continue to keep doing this. Especially since, I feel like he was the only one at that time who was really, because Dre at one point, had gotten into, kind of like alien abstract kind of concepts and stuff like that, but not in the way that J.E. was doing it. So I would probably say him. For sure. KRS-One, like definitely that power, that forcefulness of, his delivery, for sure. He was the one, his album, a friend gave me his album one summer. I remember I was 14 years old. I think it was the KRS-One album, like the self-titled one. And when I heard that, I was like, yo, these are all the things that we talk about. Like, these are all the super, like, he talking about Mumia. And, he's
like, who told you about Mumia?
Right, how you know about Mumia? No, I was familiar with, him and Black Cop and Son of the Police and all that stuff. But like hearing how clear and articulate he was, but also just so powerful and bold, like I was just struck by that. And I could not stop listening to that album. And I really think that was super pivotal for me in like shaping my voice and really my point of view from that album and hearing him. And how commanding he was. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that's a compliment. All those people I love. Dre, Black Thought. Love all of those people. And I think that they're phenomenal MCs.
Black Thought says you're his female self. Like that you're just, that you all are the same. Like he basically is like me and Asada are twins. Yeah. And that
call me his ATLian alter ego.
ATLian alter
ego. Black
Renaissance.
I fainted. I'm finished. I'm done.
Yeah, man.
I have fulfilled all of my all that I needed to fulfill as an MC. No, but But
I mean, when the song that you all have together, that one, is it just one, or do you have other joints?
Just one.
That thing is like, and you wrote that on the spot. You didn't come with those bars.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's a rare thing for me.
There's not it's not like, oh, okay, Black Thought is here, and then like, and like, this is nice that he's doing this for her. You know what I mean? Because I'm saying, you hear that sometimes. You hear it where like,
right,
where they're just like,
she did good.
Yeah, they're like, oh, that's cool. Someone called in a favor. That was cool. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I'm saying like those moments where it's just like, so he said that on that song, and then it's evident. There's not a differential in not only the lyricism but presence as well. You know what I mean? And he's bringing it, like he's full on like Tariq, Black Thought. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to have something like that in the catalog.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was a dope example of how, the whole iron sharpens iron, and that's what an exemplary MC should do. It should make you want to outmatch them. You should be trying your darndest, even if it's someone who you look up to, admire, like they're supposed to bring that out in you. And that really you're paying homage to them and all that they've given to the culture by being, by exceeding or attempting to exceed their abilities,
Yeah, like
So
this is not a half a off day right now. Like you're gonna have to bring the whole thing.
yeah, yeah. So that was such an interesting experience, and I wanted to ask you, do you write with people often? Like, or are you at your best when you're by yourself writing, and then if you're collabing with someone, you kind of you both put your pieces together?
I've written with Freeway. Freeway came one time. I put on like a series one time, it was a couple years in a row, free concert at the mosque where I used to be an assistant imam. And so he stayed in town for a while, and we made joints together, and we like wrote those together. But man, I haven't made a whole lot of music with other people. Me and Slug wrote together. There's a couple songs that we did together, but I haven't done it a whole lot, but I have had the experience of my hero of like making music, mostly I would say with Chuck D. Chuck, I called Chuck and asked him to be on my album, and he did it, and it was really dope. But then I got the call from him to be on his record, and that was like
that's the thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was really.
He asked me.
Yeah, and it's funny because New Yorkers always call me Ali. So he's like, "Yo, Ali, I need some of that Ali."
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
That's super dope.
And then, so I sent the verse, and somehow, you know how sometimes like the engineer will put it on the beat, like a beat early or late.
Yes.
Like it didn't land on the beat the way that I intended it to land on the beat. And I didn't hear it until it was out.
Oh, no. That's happened to me a few times.
Yeah, man. There's one where I'm on a joint with CL Smooth, and it's the same thing.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it got placed. And people always turn me down. People are like make my vocal lower.
Yeah, I hate when that kind of thing is like out of my control. The dope thing with working with Messiah, like that I love, is that he knows exactly. His timing is impeccable, and then he knows exactly how to bump up my vocals how they need to be. Put a little stank on them if they need a little stank. Like I love that. Like I love having him there to be able to bring out the best of what I can do. And I think that was one of the things that helped me excel as an MC. Not to mention like all the things he taught me about. That man taught me what a 16 was, but I think that is one of the things where I realize I'm very privileged to have come of age in a sense, in the real world and as an MC, and have access, to studio, access to, a tried and true producer, a tried and tested producer, and someone who can recognize not necessarily my shortcomings or things where I might need to grow into whatever, and kind of create music or like engineer after the fact to make sure I shone. And so I'm very thankful for that. I talk to, when I hear like especially stories of like other women MCs who the journey that they take, having to deal with BS producers, trying to find money and time for studio, and then have people hold stuff holding music hostage. It's just all kinds of stuff that I was just like, I was given this opportunity to blossom within this cocoon. And that's one of the things, like when I talk about metamorphosis, I always have to remind people, I know that the real word is metamorphosis.
No, but it's a metamorphosis and also Morpheus.
Yeah, it's the combination of the idea of Morpheus and finding the one and inevitably finding the one within yourself. But like that concept of emerging into something of you and the divine's own creation on your own terms has always been kind of at the forefront, because I've had multiple opportunities to do that, to blossom, on my own terms. So that's just one example of that. And I'm thankful to Soul Messiah for allowing me affording me that opportunity.
It's when you're in a situation where the norm is oppressive and the norm is demonic and the norm is, looking to extinguish light at all costs. And the norm is to commodify, and the norm is to separate and divide and conquer, and so many things become revolutionary acts. And to see you and Soul Messiah on stage together, to see a woman on stage as powerful as you are, as elegant and powerful at the same time. And this is what you're talking about. The divine is ultimately perfect balance. And so to see this elegant power, but then also Soul Messiah to be, in a supporting role, in a role where he's not looking for the spotlight, where he's not on the, he has a mic, but he's backing up you, and he's saying your words. He's saying words that you wrote, that he's backing up you, and especially to know him and to know something about his story with how influential and how important he's been to hip hop culture as a whole, but particularly, in Atlanta. It's just a really beautiful thing to see that on stage. And I think even before you utter a single word, and before he drops a single beat, to just see that the two of you on stage with that mutual respect, and with I would say the interdependence and the team work that goes into putting on what you all do, is just a really beautiful thing. And it reminds me of I've told him this 100 times, but it reminds me of the verse in the Quran that says, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala nisa," that men are supporters of women. But the word like rijal, for that particular word for manhood, talks about being legs. The idea is to help create a foundation that allows for our partners to be their complete selves. You know what I mean? To provide the support. And that's actually the sign of when somebody is in harmony in that way. So, I just want to make space for you to share whatever you would like about Soul Messiah.
He's just really incredible. He's really incredible. And there's so many layers to who he is. Not just, like you said, his contribution to hip hop. I still find out to this day, some things that he's done, stories that he forgot to tell me because there are just so many.
Yeah.
But he's always just been this like effortless leader, which is so inspiring to me and so admirable, because for me, I felt like I was placed or pushed towards a position of leadership. And it wasn't a place that I really wanted to be, but looking at him and him lead so effortlessly, and not because of needing, accolades or validation, but because he fills voids wherever he sees them. He wants to serve. He wants to be wherever he can be of service to people, to uplift his people, to be to contribute to the culture, to contribute to community, to contribute to the cultural conversation that is hip hop. He's always like to have this singular focus on, music and hip hop for so long, since he was 10 years old, like to have explored almost every part of hip hop, to know them intimately except for emceeing, and to be so good at every single one of them is just phenomenal to me. But also, I think what's reflected in the care and the precision and dedication to music is really his capacity to love. And you see that within his relationships with, with me, with his children, his family, and anyone who he meets that he cares about and has a connection with. He's just super loving and supportive and really careful to give people the space to grow, because he knows exactly who he is. So people growing in front of him doesn't diminish him. He understands that completely. If anything, it only serves to enlighten him to see someone else be comfortable with their shine. It enlightens him. So I feel like he's a jewel. He is a jewel, not only within the culture of hip hop, but within anyone who's blessed to be able to meet him and to have him in their life. He's just an important resource, and just this amazing energy. And I feel like if I hadn't met him, I feel like if I hadn't met him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And him particularly, and not just like a person who happened to be, a fixture within the hip hop community, but like he in particular, who allowed me the grace and was patient with me, but also, with his urgency. Like he's a man who gets things done. So he's going to make sure that you get it done, but like also being really patient with you and understanding of like where you are in your journey, and giving you space to figure that out is I think was the perfect formula for me kind of developing who I wanted to be. But he's just incredible. He is incredible. And I want to give him his flowers as often and as loudly as I can.
Absolutely. I feel like the idea that he's the leader that he is and he's the artist that he is because of his capacity to love. I feel like that needs a minute. There's so much more that I would love to talk to you about and ask you about. You've been really generous with your time. But if it's okay, I would love for you to just bring this particular chapter to a close. Also, there's nothing that says that we can't do this over and over and over again if you're down to if you're down for it.
Let's go.
We talk about becoming one of those mythical figures in the pantheon of great contributors to art and to culture, and you are that. And so when people look back on you, would you like for your message to be? What's your legacy if you had to distill it? What's the mark that you're leaving on the world?
I think my primary purpose is to create music and create art that allows people, including myself, to elevate to the fullness of who they are. And the first step to that is liberation of consciousness, liberating oneself from all of the strictures and all of the kind of oppressive thought that has been imprinted upon us, telling us that we aren't enough. I think the goal through my music is for people to understand or overstand how powerful they are, and to find the best way that they can show up in that power, that they can express their power in whatever way their mission or path or journey on this planet sees fit for them. And because as I explore, my own self, and as my lifelong journey has been about discovering my fullness of self, and in tapping into my divine power that allows me to express that and really free up those parts of myself that have been confined or contained to this physical body. As I discovered the microphone and used it as a vehicle to expand, I share that love, that growth, all the comfortability and the discomfort and the discovery. I share that with everybody who's listening in the hopes that they discover it within themselves. So really liberation, elevation, fullness of power, I shine, you shine, all of that.
You know how much I love the Something Real song. You know what I mean? Like all my favorite MCs, like some of the times the songs that I love from them are not the single, and it's not the quotable, and it's not but that's what I really, one of the ways that I really gauge and know somebody to be a truly phenomenal, remarkable lyricist MC when they're, the first verse off of track 3 on the record is so amazing.
Deep cuts.
Yeah. Like there's guru joints that that just live inside me. I think about, that got me pissed off, blast off, lift off, time for me to twist off, vocal fist off until your dome piece, home piece. There's just like joints like that from all of my favorite MCs that really live in my heart. And one of that Something Real is one of the ones from you. But it's in that coupling where you're saying, never surmise my drive, I pride my destiny out of the hands of sinner types. 10% in men of vice became an instrument of light. You know what I mean? And who will have the guts to challenge that? Because this the greatest show on every line's a freaking balance act. That, I think that reality, to me, that you absolutely are an instrument of light. And the darker it gets, the more the light is necessary. And also the darker it gets, the darker the environment, the more even a little bit of light can just erase all of that. Like darkness is a deprivation. Yeah. I'm talking about spiritual darkness. I'm not talking about, but spiritual darkness is a deprivation of light. And so the second some light shows up, you know what I mean? It just corrects all of that. You know what I mean?
It's just about, mm-hmm.
And
yeah. And oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please.
Go ahead. No, there's an artist that, named Mama Soul.
Oh yeah, Mama Soul is amazing.
She's incredible. Yeah, and I didn't hear the question of this interview. It was an excerpt from an interview that she did where she was talking about when people find her music, she wants them to perceive her music like a holy book, and not in the sense of that, she's the end all be all God or whatever, but in her words, but her words are sacred, and she considers them so thoughtfully and intentionally before she writes and creates and shares her music with the world. And that was I was so in alignment with that, resonated so deeply with me. In that if there can be anything in what I create that is a source of comfort for someone, that is a source of guidance, awakening, illumination, then my job is done. I've done my job well. If the words that I've so thoughtfully considered and thoughtfully examined before I uttered them, because I understand how powerful words are. Words sound power. If that in any way can be an inspiration for anyone or some kind of solace for anyone, that's what I've been called to do. So my job has been fulfilled.
Beautiful. No better way to wrap it up. You're a living treasure. You're a treasure. You're a treasure in this culture. I think when I was younger, and I always envisioned like, where's this thing going? You know what I mean? Like if this is where it's at now, and I remember KRS said, nobody's from the old school, because rap is still a brand new tool. 50 years down the line, we could start this because we'll be the old school artists. And I remember thinking to myself, because I'm like 12 when he said that, and I'm thinking like, man, what's this going to be like, and how is this thing going to grow and mature and evolve, and what type of beauty and excellence is it going to produce? Like how many more superheroes are coming along that this, and in some ways it's evolved like I thought it might, and in other ways, and sometimes we're looking for that, but you're absolutely one of the people that, like, even in my wildest dreams, it's like, for you to have emerged on the scene, it really is a gift. And so, I think we all are really grateful to you for all of the sacrifices, and for all of the effort, and for all of the intention and the thoughtfulness, and just for the extreme generosity, that it really, for what you do offer the world, and for what you do offer everybody that comes in contact with you and with your work and with your art and with your being and with your presence, the people that get to not only be in the world with you, but be in a room with you and watch the metamorphosis that happens when you transform from being Sada to being Sa-Roc, it really is a tremendously healing force. It really is it's a very, very divine thing. And so, for all of that generosity of spirit and that generosity of life force, we're just really very, very grateful to you. And
thank you.
Yeah, man. And thank you for being one of the early guests on this show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor, honestly.
Endless gratitude to the incredible MC, artist, healer, educator, speaker, and universe known as Sa-Roc. Special thanks and shout out to Soul Messiah, who is her amazing DJ and producer, an incredible force on his own. We have to have Soul Messiah on the show at some point very soon. Head to Sa-Roc.com and check out their album, The Sharecropper's Daughter. You can check out all of their merch offerings. They have an entire catalog of music that you can check out. Sa-Roc also has a hot sauce that's amazing. You can check that out. It's completely vegan, super dope. Also, make sure to head to brotherali.com for all the information and updates about the podcast. Go to the event section to see all of our upcoming tour dates. Come and see us on the Travelers Tour. Head to the join section on brotherali.com so you can get down with the caravan to support and engage and be part of the community in the caravan. Want to give a special shout out to Amna Mirza, to Mansoor Panawala, DJ Last Word, to Amir Rahman, my brother Ant, who produced the song The Travelers and allowed us to use the music as our theme song. Special shout to Darian Washington, to Mark from Medina, who created the stamp that we use as the logo for this podcast. The Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly and is a production of Travelers Media, sending you all the love, sending you all the peace, all the well wishes. Please make sure to like and share and subscribe and comment. All of that stuff really helps the podcast to grow. Don't assume that we want to be the best kept secret in music or podcasting. We really depend on you to spread the word. If you're loving the podcast, if you're enjoying it, if you're appreciating it, thank you so much for all of your well wishes and your messages. What helps us the most is to share, to spread the word. We love you. We appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.